But using the slogan, they got through the USA Patriot Act, which removes many of our liberties. Nobody made a sound when we lost habeas corpus, due process of law. And suddenly Bush managed to get rid of it. Where was a voice on television, aside from mine, that spoke out against this? Where are all those noble jurists, those great lawyers, those lovers of liberty? Where the hell were they? They were nowhere. Now we have a totalitarian government. And the totalitarian government wants to watch everybody, total surveillance of everyone. They listen to the telephone conversations. They look at your credit cards. They look where you travel. We are totally policed. This is contrary to everything in our Constitution.
A 2010 Pentagon directive details what critics say is a policy that envisions the Obama administration's potential use of military force against Americans. The directive has non-controversial provisions on support to civilian fire, emergency services, and domestic use of the Army Corps of Engineers. But the Washington Times reports that the troubling aspect of the directive is that it outlines the presidential authority for the use of military arms and forces, including drones, in operations of domestic unrest.
I believe it would be constitutional for the government to target and kill any U.S. citizen with a drone or with a shotgun without due process. Nor should any president deploy armed drones over U.S. soil.
Okay, well, a troubling new report is now revealing that a secret memo from 2010 outlined the administration's potential use of military force against Americans in the United States of America.
A defense source brought this to my attention and was fairly concerned about it, said, look, this appears to be the latest step in the administration's decision to, at some point, use force against American citizens in the future. There are a lot of people concerned about this, and then you see this memo in connection with the growing militarization of many of the non-security agencies of government.
In Connecticut, tens of thousands of residents have failed to comply with a new law that requires gun owners to register all military-style rifles with the state. In response to the Sandy Hook school shooting that resulted in 26 fatalities, Connecticut passed one of the strongest gun control measures in the nation. It's estimated that only 15% of gun owners have applied for assault weapons certificates, meaning the remainder could very soon become Class D felons.
I think they're going to have a hard time putting this back in compliance, especially when precedence is already set here in Capitol Hill with our president, who is changing the laws, which he's breaking the federal laws every day with what the stance that he's taking on different legislations, primarily his health care plan. So people look at that and say, well, why should we abide by these laws if the president is breaking these laws?
Days after a mass shooting and stabbing spree by a California college student, a number of state lawmakers are pushing to make it more difficult for potential killers to get their hands on a gun. In California, state lawmakers are now considering a bill called Assembly Bill 1014. It would create a first-in-the-nation gun violence restraining order system similar to the way domestic violence restraining orders are issued. If granted, police could then temporarily seize any firearms the person already owned and add their name to a list of people prohibited from purchasing weapons.
Tanks, guns, armor, all tried and tested on the battlefield. Now some of it is here in central Indiana on our streets, being used to keep us safe. It's surplus military hardware that's found a new home.
Fox 59's Russ McQuaid tonight shows us how some of our local police departments are now armed for war.
Surplus U.S. military hardware is coming home from the wars, being assigned to the streets and back roads of central Indiana to keep Hoosiers safe at a time of escalating homeland violence. Once it patrolled Afghanistan. Now it's an armored SWAT vehicle with windshields that can take a direct hit from a .50 caliber weapon, a gun turret up top, and the armor to protect at least a half dozen cops inside.
When I first started, we really didn't have the violence that we see today. The weaponry is totally different now than it was in the beginning of my career. Plus, you have a lot of people that are coming out of the military that have the ability and the knowledge to build IEDs and to defeat law enforcement technique.
This is Congressman Hank Johnson.
Georgia Congressman Hank Johnson is worried about Pentagon spending and small-town cops who have acquired helicopter parts and boats and bayonets and guns they don't need or can't keep track of, and he's ready to write clampdown legislation.
We've been reporting about this all along. Police are arming themselves to fight against your average American citizen, conservatives, patriots, and definitely returning military. Why aren't people seeing this? Well, perhaps because their local news stations are massaging it into their brain that this is completely normal.
According to the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court, police officers no longer need warrants to search a person's vehicle. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled 4-2 that police officers can search a vehicle without a warrant. Critics say the ruling gives too much power to police and will infringe on citizens' privacy.
Are you ready for the next big thing? It may be moving in with you. The Financial Times reports that next week, Apple will announce a new way to connect you to what techies call the Internet of Things.
One of the concepts people have been talking about is Apple getting into what they call kind of the smart home or the Internet of Things. That's an area a lot of big companies like Google are very interested in, so you know Apple's got to be interested in it also.
If we have this sort of home invasion, if you will, by all these devices, do you think this is something consumers want or are going to embrace?
You know, it's something we thought about since the World's Fair, since the Jetsons. It's an intriguing concept. I'm not sure how much of it people actually want to integrate into their lives.
You think this is the next frontier of technology, Dan?
It's one of the potential next frontiers, and whether somebody, maybe a big guy like Apple, can get everything to work together, that's always the key, getting everybody on the same plan at the same time.
I would be fascinated if someone doesn't want this technology, because I think it's amazing. It's life-changing.
Yeah, certainly.
The National Security Agency is collecting a massive trove of images that it intercepts over social media, emails, and texts, some which are so clear it can use them in its facial recognition operations. According to the New York Times, top secret NSA documents indicate that the spy agency's global facial recognition technology has seen huge growth in the last 4 years. Millions of images are intercepted per day, only adding to the huge database of personal information the government can have on individuals, both American and foreign. Civil liberties advocates worry the program seems to be operating in a legal vacuum.
Controversial new curriculum in New York schools still making waves in the education community. Last night, parents, teachers, and students came out to voice their concerns about Common Core.
If attendance is any indication of how concerned parents and students are about Common Core standard, then the packed room at Carmel Town Hall said it all.
If you look at the way that this has been implemented, it's a complete disaster.
Common Core Standard is a new curriculum implemented in schools across the nation. The goal of Common Core is to put students on a level playing field and help prepare them for a global economy. However, many teachers and students say it creates a factory-like environment that stifles individual learning and puts pressure on educators to only teach to the test.
And we're creating unneeded anxiety and really using our kids as guinea pigs in a failed experiment. We really need to put the brakes on Common Core.
It was the testimony from the kids that had the biggest impact.
I love to be creative and express myself, and they're not letting us do this. It's kind of just the same thing over and over again.
Well, New York received $700 million from the federal government in exchange for accepting Common Core. 45 states, including New York, have implemented the curriculum in their schools.
And now to Florida, where a school teacher allegedly humiliated a 12-year-old boy in front of an entire class after she caught him reading the Bible during what was designated as free reading time.
I begin with that shocking lawsuit. A Connecticut family claiming their 3 daughters were brainwashed into joining a religious cult by teachers and, of course, that guidance counselor at the high school.
On the outside, it's a typical suburban school. But on the inside, a new lawsuit claims 4 staff members at Avon High School in Connecticut tried to brainwash 3 sisters, and their parents had no idea, indoctrinating them, quote, into a religious cult that promotes martyrdom and celebrates death, leaving them flat and distant, reclusive, secretive, and non-communicative. Adding, they began speaking in a bizarre new language and cut off all of their communications with the family.
This case strikes at the heart of the First Amendment.
It's absurd. Why don't you have me arrested? Why don't we do that as a civics lesson? A nice First Amendment lesson, right? It's absurd, but everybody's playing around about what the content of this is. Nobody's talking about censoring the book. Nobody's talking about banning the book or burning the book or anything.
Would you please be respectful of the other people?
Like you're respectful of my daughter, right, and my children. That you had that you put this book out with the notice. Why don't we read the notice that was put out?
Why do we ask? Would anyone else like to speak?
because I violated 2-minute rule.
Would anyone else like to be recognized? Is somebody in the back?
This is ridiculous.
Your name is Gail Brunt.
I'm sorry.
Gail Brunt.
Thank you for the invitation.
Can you
Yeah,
state
I'll do
your
it.
address, please? Whitebird.
The world is changing with accelerating speed. This presents opportunity, but also new dangers. It will be your generation's task to respond to this new world.
Where we face new challenges. This is the world you are graduating into. To lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century.